evening. I hope everybody is doing well. 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 Good evening to you. Good evening to you. Good evening. This is Daring Dialogues, and I'm your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I hope you all are having a great and wonderful day. It is Relationship Wednesday, where we talk all things relationship. And right now, we are talking about the challenges and coping strategies of making a meaningful life through the book entitled Why Smart People Hurt. So, we're only going to be in one book tonight, and I'm going to try to read as much as I possibly can through this newest chapter. The subject tonight is original, formed, and available personalities. Our original personality, the personality we form, and the personality that's available to us. So I'm not sure how far I'm going to get into this chapter, but if we get through it, that would be fabulous. If not, we will continue this on next week. So let's dive right in. Original, formed, and available personalities. Each of us comes into the world with a unique mix of aptitudes, characteristics, inclinations, genetic information, aspects of our temperament, and other qualities and capacities that in natural psychology we call original personality. You are not born a blank slate. No parent believes that, nor does anyone who has seen a litter of kittens. Your original personality includes everything from your native intelligence to your basic mood structure and all those aspects of temperament like adaptability, sensitivity, and distractibility that developmentalists and developmental psychologists study. There was a time when people thought that fully a quarter of the human race was born melancholic. It is not unreasonable to suppose that people are born happier or sadder, just as they are born smarter or less smart. Likewise, it is reasonable to suppose that each individual is already born with a certain worldview or primed for a certain worldview. Probably we are born with sets of both qualities and capacities and also a unique blueprint, one that may haunt us as a ghostly memory if and when life deflects us from who we might have been or who we ought to have been. There is nothing surprising about the idea that we are born with an original personality. What is surprising is that, except for a very limited exploration of that cluster of traits known in psychology as temperament, an exploration that, by the way, the helping side of psychology makes almost no use of all, psychologists have avoided thinking about your original personality. Psychology does not credit human beings with an original personality or take it into account when they diagnose and treat their clients or patients. Doesn't it matter whether or not the person across from you came into the world already naturally sad if you're going to pin on them the label of clinically depressed? Of course it does. Picture a litter of kittens. One is more curious than the next. One is more aggressive than the next. One is a leader, another is a follower. The first is not potentially curious, she is already curious. The second is not potentially aggressive, they are already aggressive. The third and fourth are not potentially leaders and followers, they are already that. In exactly the same way, a human infant is not potentially smart, they are already smart. True, they don't have language yet. True, their environment can dumb them down. True, they cannot write War and Peace or solve quadratic equations, but they are already built a certain way and already looks out at life with a mindset and apparatus. A smart person is smart right from the beginning. Then comes the environment. The child looks out at the world with his original personality, interacts with the world according to that personality, and has their developmental blueprint altered by the world, producing what we call the formed personality. He forms, or she forms, or doesn't form secure attachments. His world is safer or more dangerous. They see an array of options or few options, and so on. To take a simple analogy, our curious kitten in a loving household becomes a gentle cat, but if thrown out into the world, becomes feral. Their curiosity manifests one way in that loving home, and another way if they must fend for themselves in back alleys. In one environment, it keeps her amused, in another, it helps her to kill. To say this simply, a person's original personality is altered into their formed personality through the circumstances of living. This complex alteration may produce a weakened or a strengthened person, a smarter or a less smart person, an open or a defended person, and so on. Your formed personality may be more than as well as less than your original one, or more in some regards and less in others. Maybe you were born selfish, not so unusual for a creature with selfish genes, and nevertheless you learned generosity. Or maybe your selfishness grew into everyday narcissism. Either is possible, although it is rather the rule that for most people, their formed personality will be less than their original one, since living is a hard game that tends not to bring out the best in us. All the while, some free personality remains available. To use the language of natural psychology, we are born with an original personality, we grow into our formed personality through living, and we retain an available personality, that amount of awareness that allows us to make changes, to see our formed personality for what it is, make guesses about our original personality, and most importantly, set a meaning making agenda to change. It is with our available personality that we say, I am not a slave to my upbringing, and I can make myself proud through my efforts. You might have been born sad, and life might have made you sadder. It is with your available personality that you deal with that reality. You may have been born anxious, and life may have made you more anxious. It is with your available personality that you deal with that reality. You might have been born smart and forced into dumb work. It is with your available personality that you deal with that reality. The more defensive you are, the less your available personality. The more addicted you are, the less available personality. The less you think for yourself, the less your available personality. The more the engine of your brain has gone off racing on its own, the less your available personality. The more you succumb to one lure or another. We'll examine four lures later on: the lure of language, logic, fantasy, and mysticism. The less your available personality. The more you are being fooled or ruled, the less your available personality. In short, we may possess much less available personality than we wish we had, and we may know that and experience that as our pain. The following report from Maxine does a lovely job of tying these themes together. Maxine explained, I've done animal rescue for years. Currently, I have a feral cat and her litter of three kitties in my attic. It took almost 3 months for me to see the kitties because she's taught them that the sight and sound of humans is a dangerous thing. I know that I have only their available personality to work with, which even after just a few months is a very fixed and reduced amount. I bet if I could have handled them within days of their being born and played with them in their early weeks, they would have expressed their original personality to me. But as it is, their mama did what she considers a mighty fine job at forming their personalities. And she has very limited skills herself. So every day I just show up. I work with what's available, and original and formed don't really matter. I meet them where they are. There's a beauty in that simplicity and a real honoring of these animals. But it's all very difficult when it comes to me. When it comes to dealing with rescue animals with behavioral problems, I accept that they have only what's available. It's the sanest approach because thinking about their lost innocence or what they might have been is devastating to me, and I don't need to be devastated. But I think about me or about a friend or a family member. I cannot maintain that same neutrality. I grieve for what's been lost. I rebel at the idea that this is all that's left or that this is all that's available. I see and feel the diminishment. Why do I lose the beauty and simplicity of saying, hey, here's what's available today? Why do I feel paralyzed when I begin thinking about what I should have been or what life should have been? The idea of available personality goes from feeling useful, simple, and beautiful when it comes to working with rescue animals and feeling like a prison sentence when I apply it to me. I bet I'm not the only one who feels this way. It may be true that we only have so much available personality left to us, but I don't really find that truth acceptable. A child is born, he is already somebody. To pick one set of circumstances, let's say that he is a bright boy born into a middle class family that demands good grades and promotes a worldview that includes playing music, playing sports, admiring nature, going to college, and getting a good job. The parents pay lip service to the idea that thinking is a good thing, but don't do too much thinking, and they don't really like it when their son thinks. They pay lip service to the idea that family members should love one another, but they don't love much and they aren't very warm and friendly. They likewise pay lip service to the ideas of freedom, but present their son with the clear message that he is not free to get mediocre grades, not free to dispute their beliefs, and not free to really be himself. Of course, this is all confusing to the child. In this environment, he becomes sadder than he was born to be, saddened by having to perform at a piano recital or something that doesn't interest him, and that makes him anxious, saddened by having to take his classes seriously, or by his parents' inability to love him and take an interest in what he likes, saddened by what he learns in school about how human beings treat one another, saddened most of all by his inability to make sense of this picture of life, a picture that everyone seems to be holding as the way to live, but to him may feel odd or contradictory or empty or meaningless. His anxiety at piano is noticed, and then he is put on anti anxiety medication. His restlessness in class is noticed, and he is put on anti ADHD medication. His sadness is noticed, and he is put on antidepressants. Now, to go along with this sense that this can't really be the way life is supposed to feel or lived, he has three mental disorder labels and three sets of medications that make him a perpetual patient and that produce all sorts of side effects. Everyone in his family seems to think that it is normal that he has three mental disorders. They, of course, all have theirs as well. Then come his teenage years. Teenagers in first world countries are underutilized by the society and strangled by the nothingness of school. No amount of tennis lessons, spring vacations, camping trips, or extracurricular activities can fill the void created by having nothing asked of them. There are only two solutions to this epidemic problem that causes the havoc of things like the Columbine High tragedies, anorexia, teen suicide, careless sex, video game addiction, social media frenzy, brand name fixation, and deep sadness. That society asks something of its teenagers, or that teenagers begin to ask something of themselves. But nothing is asked of this young man except he do what he is told to do and that he get ready for college. Somewhere along the line, he begins to have feelings about what work he might like to do or what work he doesn't like. His parents, troubled themselves, anxious themselves with their own opinions, add their input and try to influence his decision. Since he seems to like biology, why shouldn't he become a doctor? He shrugs, not wanting to think about the future. What he really wants to do is listen to music, watch movies, spend time with his friends, and maybe find a girlfriend. College comes, and he is obliged to act like he is deciding about his future. His classes are not meaningful to him. He has trouble not wallowing in sadness. He manages to graduate, and the part time job he takes one summer as an intern leads to a full time, entry level job in the corporate world. His early 20s pass in a characteristic haze of happy hour drinking, escapades, office politics, and relentless sadness. In his mid 20s, he gets lucky. At that point, having had to survive the consequences of his challenges and his own past, he comes into contact with a psychology like natural psychology that alerts him to the fact that the place he has arrived is rather to be expected. Now he has a pivotal choice to make whether or not to make use of his available personality to reduce his distress and to begin making meaning. He begins to see that the language of the natural psychology in which we talk about the original personality and the form one and the available one, about making investments and meaningful opportunities, about the unfortunate but completely normal consequence of environmental challenges, and about distress relief rather than diagnosis and treatment for mental disorders that can help him think about what is now required of him if he wants to reduce his distress and right his ship. He readies himself to deal with all of this, but there is still the problem of his meaningless work. It is one thing to accept the challenge of making meaning for yourself, but how exactly does that relate to the world of work? A serious challenge that loomed early on and grew more pressing as he moved from high school through college and into his young adult years was the necessity of choosing a line of work. What young person understands that jobs and professions do not exist to serve their meaning needs in whatever choice they make is unlikely to really satisfy. Now he is finally beginning to understand that. Challenged to feel less sad, challenged to deal with what is at once an inflated and deflated sense of self, challenged to actually manifest his smartness, and in pain on many fronts despite his new understanding of life, he must still pay the rent and buy groceries. As much as he might like to, he can't put the matter of work on a back burner. He is forced to grapple with that tedious, slippery, unrelenting challenge that we will look at next, the world of work. So, some questions for you as we go into some discussion. Question number one: do you have the sense that you can intuit your original personality? Do you know who you were meant to be? Have you discovered your original personality? And are you trying to move towards that original personality? Are you trying to be as authentic as you can possibly be? Or have you taken on a whole formed identity that pleases everybody else and answers everybody else's problems but your own? Who do you feel you were supposed to be? I think I'm pretty close to my original personality. I do. Number one, because I've always gotten in trouble for this personality, and I've just learned to deal with that. That everybody's not going to like my personality. I would get into it with my family members about my personality. I would definitely get into it with my mother about my personality. And I didn't care what was said about my personality. I didn't care what physical abuse I had to endure for my personality. I just kept going. And I know that that is something that everybody doesn't do. Like, I refused to be beat into submission, even though my mom was very physically abusive. Um, I wouldn't stop talking. I'm still talking right now. I wouldn't stop sharing my opinions. I wouldn't stop telling people the truth, even though I knew they weren't going to like what I had to say. And I've been doing that since I was about 4 or 5 years old. So I think I'm still pretty close to my original personality, but I do feel like I'm growing in that original personality, like I'm still moving towards it. Question number two: what are the major characteristics of your formed personality? I would say part of my formed personality is trying to learn how to be more kind in my response to people. I think that is definitely a part of my formed personality. I wouldn't have been kind before. I wouldn't have tried to gauge whether or not a person was ready to hear something. So now I still tell people the truth. I just I just have a little bit more discernment as to when they are ready to hear the truth, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get around to it. I just don't blurt it out. So I think part of my foreign personality is um, boundaries on my own speech and tongue and knowing when to say things. Question three: which of those are strengths and which of those are more like liabilities? Well, sometimes holding back because of time, or holding back because you're trying to give that person time to receive you, that can be seen or perceived as a liability. Sometimes people see that as a weakness, um, especially in this day and age when you're not using a lot of profanity to get your point across. I don't know what it is in our society right now, but everybody thinks that cursing makes them mature. I don't know. I don't know what that's about, that they got to throw a curse word in every other word, but that's where we are. Number four: if you would like a personality update, describe that update. I don't know if I want a personality update. I just think I need to grow more in my original personality. So I guess my update might be growing towards it more. And five: what do you see as the relationship amongst your original formed and available personality? My relationship right now is, I think I have a lot of my original personality. I do have some things that were formed. I kind of see those as self preserving. And then I think I have lots of available personality left. But definitely in my formed state, I formed some things because I used to be a person that used a lot of profanity. And I had to unform that about myself because I didn't feel like that was a part of who I wanted to be. So yeah, I left that in I unformed that part because I was that person that was using profanity every other word. And then I realized, wait a minute, I don't need to do that. So that was a change I made for myself. All right. Anyone want to come in tonight and chop it up about this topic or answer any of these questions? Where do you feel that you are? You feel like you in your original personality? Do you more so operate in your form personality, meaning your environment has shaped you mainly in how you operate now? Do you feel like your personality needs to grow? That is the available side of your personality. So let's bring some people on. All right, we're going to try to get both of you in here at the same time. Let's see if it happens.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I am doing better than I was earlier today.
I got to hear the end because there was a blank, but then I listened on and I got to hear the rest, and I was like, "Oh my God, what a day!" But I was when you were talking about original and form, in the beginning I think I was more in a form personality. But as I came into being more secure and the person that I'm supposed to be, so then I'm more into the original personality because I was outspoken. And my mother told me when I was about 14, that red thing in my mouth was going to get me into a lot of trouble. But I would always speak truth. But I was still like in that kind of what formed me or my environment kind of personality, but I was always a truth speaker. Mm-hmm. So I would say that I'm growing now into more of a stronger voice, more secure, and really knowing what to say, because sometimes I didn't have a filter And you just would blurt out things, but you thank God for spiritual growth as you grow and into the knowledge of God. So that part of my growth has helped me spiritually, but I still tell the truth.
Gotcha.
And sometimes I do. For me, I have to know when to release and when to, so that for me is like James, not out of, but I mean, truth is to bridle my tongue and guard my mouth for some things I should say when I should not say it. So that's for me is growth.
Yeah. And again, you bring up a good point there about the filter, because in that unlearning of that part of my form personality, I had to evaluate, am I self-filtering because I want to, or am I self-filtering out of fear of the consequences of really speaking what I want to say?
Yeah.
So even in saying I'm going to tone it down, right? Or I'm not going to use certain words, I'm going to remove certain words out of my vocabulary, I still had to evaluate why I was doing that. Was I doing it because society says this is the proper way to speak, right? Because sometimes when you look at the form personality, a part of that can be what we call code switching as well, where we talk more proper in front of certain people rather than use our what they call our ebonics or our African American vernacular English.
Yeah.
And so now I find myself using AAVE when I feel like it. And I no longer say, okay, I'm going to talk proper English so I can be heard and respected. It's like, no, if this is the way I want to talk, this is the way I'm going to talk. I'm not going to change the inflection of my voice, though I can do that for acting. Like I can really change my voice and everything and give you a little high pitch and everything and just, golly gee wilkers, right? But I can do that for acting, but when I'm not acting, I don't want to do that. Hello, Dr. Hill. I don't want to do that. So
I want
again,
to be my authentic self.
Right. And so I had to recognize, okay, if I'm going to self-censor, I need to be sure of my reason of why I'm self-censoring. Am I doing it to please someone? Or am I doing it because I feel a personal, earnest conviction that this is something about myself that needs to change? And for me, that was what profanity was about for me.
Yes.
Because I realized that words are spiritual containers and words have power.
Yes.
And intent behind them. And so I decided that I wanted to change the energy and the intent that I was releasing into the world, because what I was releasing was not getting me the results that I wanted. So I began to work on the kinds of words I was releasing, because I started realizing the weight and the responsibility of what I was saying. Pastor Ben, go ahead.
Yes, I think I'm pretty close to my original personality, but it took me a while to get there. I had to realize that by nature, I wasn't a quiet person, but that was form.
Okay.
And I started coming out of that because I realized, sometimes people got to speak up, and I started coming out of it at that point. Then it got to the place where people say, well, Ben is quiet, but when he speaks, it's you have to listen. And it started going from there. Now, with my siblings and my parents, I think there were different things that were formed about me. Not at the same time, I believe it was also my siblings and my parents that helped me grow into my original personality, because of things that they were doing, and I started realizing who I was. And it's time for y'all to back up. Because that started making me take a stand that I knew was always in me to take a stand against things that were not right. I always spoke truth. When something wasn't right, even at a young age, I was ready to get it straight. Oh, we need to straighten this out. See, but somehow that got buried because I was formed. See, being formed to something that I wasn't. But it returned, and it's like, they don't like me because I don't care. See, before it was about caring if a person likes me or not, but now I don't. I'm going to speak the truth. If you need to hear this, you need to hear it. Now I may try and do it as nice as I can, but the truth is going to be the truth. Now this is the thing. Now you know what I say. If there's a problem, the first part of solving that problem is finding out that there is a problem, and then if that problem is you, change it.
Yeah.
See, that's the part people have a problem with. Them accepting the fact that they are the problem. But that doesn't help you grow when you keep denying that you are the problem.
That's true.
Yeah, that's kind of like step one. Before I go look at somebody else, I got to go to the mirror first and say, what is it about me?
Amen.
What is it about me that's attracting this kind of behavior to me?
Yes.
What am I doing, or what kind of energy am I putting out that's making this thing feel like it's okay to keep happening?
Yes.
Part of my formed personality that I had to unlearn was doing things to get a kind of like a good job from people, right? Because I knew that I could help. I really enjoyed the feedback of being helpful. And so I had to say, God made me go on a year of no. I've talked about this before. He made me go on a year of no, even though I love to say yes. Do you know how hard it is for people who love to say yes to have to spend a year saying no? To things that you're interested in, to things that you really want to do, to places that you really want to go, to events that you really want to attend. And God said, you're going to spend a year telling people no. And through that process, I was able to see the real side of people come out.
For real.
When I said no.
Yes.
And I never would have seen it had I been in my formed personality of always telling people yes. So it was like I wasn't going to get that lesson had I not followed what the Lord was telling me to do. I wouldn't have never seen it because my formed personality had programmed me to just be helpful to people. Just be helpful. But being helpful to people wasn't allowing me to see the full range of that person because I kept stepping in to assist. And so for some of them, it was God making them take more control over their own life. And for me to get out of the way so God could do that.
Amen. Yes.
Because sometimes we think we're helping by helping, but we're really not.
I learned that.
Sometimes we're in the way of the independence forming that God is trying to do in someone's life. And for others, it was an unmasking of, I'm only present in your life because you can do something for me.
Exactly.
And when I see that you cannot do that for me, even though you might have done it for 10, 15 years straight.
Goodbye.
The one time you can't do it and you disconnect, that was what God was trying to show me. Some people are only attached to you because of what you are willing to do for them every single time. So even in that form personality, and unlearning some things, it really helped me overall, not just with myself, but also with my understanding, also with my emotional awareness
Yes.
with other people.
Right.
And that learning how to say no was also an exercise in self control.
Yes.
It was an exercise in self control, because sometimes we think that just because we can do it, we should go and do it. We should conquer the world, right? I've got the talent, I've got the skill, I've got the ability, I can get it done. But just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
And
Right.
so that was a lesson for me. Um, Final thoughts, Pastor Ben?
Well, like you said earlier, find yourself. In so many words, find yourself. Find your original person. The way I put it, this is the way I put it when I tell people. Let's say, Brother Chair. Brother Chair, God wants the Brother Chair that he placed in you, not the one that you are or the one that you think you are. He wants what he placed in you. These things, our original selves, God placed those things in us, our original selves. So that once we reach that age to where we understand and who he is and we accept him in our lives, those same attributes will be used for the kingdom. So he placed it there. We need to find that and let it grow.
Yeah, and the reality is you're going to get pushback the more you move towards your original self, and you're going to get pushback from people who have no intention of moving towards their original self.
Right.
And people who say, "Man, I wish I could be as XYZ." Whether that's, I wish I could be as kind, I wish I could be as bold, I wish I could be as truthful, I wish I could throw off the cares and opinions of people that weigh me down. Whatever it is, the more you move towards who you were called to be and created to be in this earth, you're going to have some pushback. So you have to expect that there's going to be a measure of pushback as you move towards your original self. Lady Barbara, final thoughts.
This book has really, 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 really been interesting. And like I always say, thank you for the material or the resources that you always share with us. So I thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Again, we were reading tonight from and having discussion on Why Smart People Hurt, a guide for the bright, the sensitive, and the creative. I can't tell you how many creative people that I'm in contact with now who are sharing some of the same kind of weariness and pains and frustrations that this author actually details and explains why they're feeling the way they're feeling. So if you are a person who considers yourself smart, brilliant, whether that is academically or otherwise, I encourage you to get this book, because he really does dive into some of the challenges that creatives face, that people who may not be creative don't even consider it being an issue. And one of the things he talks about is the fact that we are in an age of anti-intellectualism, while we are at the same time in the greatest age of information. Everybody's not reaching for knowledge. Some people want to remain ignorant, and to a bright, creative, smart person, that can drive one off the wall, because you're like, why, with all of this knowledge available, are you choosing to remain in ignorance? Like, what is wrong with you? And so he talks about that and how to work through that frustration as well. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I do want to thank you all for your time and attention. And I'm going to end with reading what Rob B30 has said here over on YouTube. He said, I'm trying to grow socially because I've always been an introvert, but it's been tough because there's times where I don't have a lot to say. I would rather get to the point. Listen, get to the point, Rob. Just get to the point.
Right.
Just get to the point. Just hone how you get to the point. That's what I've learned to do. Sometimes I just want to cut all of the frou-frou out. This is why we have Sunday dialogue rather than a church service, because we're like, let's cut the frou-frou out. We don't need a nightclub atmosphere before we teach you the word. We just gonna sing a little something. We're gonna honor the Lord. We're gonna ask for his guidance, and we're gonna get to it. So I understand that sentiment of just wanting to cut to the chase. So just hone how you cut to the chase. Hone it. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, everyone. So continue to go out and be what?
Be light.
Be
light. Thank you all again for your time and attention. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.